Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. I have little Lacey bug here. I'm going to burp cough because we just fed. This is my little angel baby. Second daughter, Lacey May. She is currently 10 weeks old. 10 weeks old today actually. But her corrected age, because she was 6 weeks early, she's only a month. So she's the size of a 4-week-old baby. And we had a very eventful birth, which I'm telling you guys about today, but I just wanted to introduce you to Lacey girl and show you my sweet little angel. I am honestly obsessed, guys. She is just such a sweet angel. She is such a good baby. We've had a really good breastfeeding journey. She has been quite settled, compared to Ivy, which was a sweet little colicky baby. So yeah, we are doing very well. So today I am going to share my birth vlog. Trigger warning is it was quite a traumatic birth. It was emergency C-section, placenta previa. If you're currently heavily pregnant and you have birth fear, I maybe would skip this video or just wait until after, because it was very full on, which you guys will hear about soon. But before we get into the video, I just want to say a big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. You guys know they are a frequent sponsor. Basically, if you don't know, they do domains and they do websites, and I did my very first, oh darling, my very first website with them, which I'll put a little video here. And it's funny because I was kind of like, I've been reflecting so much on this maternity leave, and I just feel so grateful that I can take a full 6 months off. And I very much prepared for it with my team, but what really started this whole journey with my businesses and being able to take maternity leave and also have, my husband at home was me taking the risk of doing my own thing. I left corporate law after 6 years of study, and I just was like, I want to do something different. I've got this desire on my heart, and it honestly started from that website, from that ebook, from me putting my feelers out. What I want to do, what I want to try, what do I feel passionate about, and it has evolved into me owning Naked Harvest, Rise and Conquer, that are able to support this sort of lifestyle. So I'm very grateful, and I wanted to say, if you have something on your heart, just do it. You won't regret it. And so yeah, with Squarespace, you can start your website. You can, action that desire. I love Squarespace because they currently have AI to help you make all the design features really pretty. They also have an email system. First thing you need to do is create an email system. That's like business 101, because you don't control the algorithm on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, and they can take away all your community. Sometimes your community don't see you. So building an email list so you can contact your community when you want is so important. So make sure you do that. And also it's really easy to collect money from your customers. That is all done in the back end. So usually with most other websites, you have to get a plug in, but Squarespace have that all in the back sorted for you. So they're really a platform that have thought about it all. So if you do have something on your heart, honestly guys, just do it. You won't regret it. Even if that's not the thing, it will turn into the thing. The website you see there with the ebooks, that wasn't the thing. There was a fun little project on the way, but then it turned into the thing. So of course I've got a discount code. I'll put it on the screen, but I hope you enjoy this birth vlog. It's pretty full on, it's very emotional, but I am so grateful. My next video, I'll definitely film like a day in the life with sweet Lacey girl. But thank you so much, enjoy. I had a condition, like Cliff Notes is I had a condition called placenta previa, where my placenta was sitting over my cervix. So the baby comes through the cervix. So if your placenta is there, the baby can't pass through. And it's actually quite detrimental because if you go into spontaneous labor, the cervix opens up. And if the placenta is sitting on top, it basically pulls the placenta and can like abrupt it and can tear it. And if that happens, I remember reading, this, you shouldn't do this, but I was Googling facts and like, if that happens, the baby only has a 40% chance of living. So it's a very serious condition and it's classed as a high-risk pregnancy. There is grades. So there's like the placenta being not over, but it's a few centimeters up. You still have to get a C-section. Mine was grade 4, which means it was completely over, the most high-risk grade. And I kept thinking throughout the pregnancy it would come up. It didn't. I accepted the fact I was going to have a C-section. That was booked in. And then also because of the high risk factor of it, my doctor wanted me to come in from 35 weeks on bed rest. I was very hesitant of that because of Ivy leaving her, knowing that it would be 2 weeks before I get the C-section and 37 weeks, and then also another week in hospital with the baby. But of course, you do what you got to do. So I was like, okay, I'll go on to bed rest at 35 weeks. I had finished maternity leave a bit earlier. And because of this condition, we really were prepared. So we had baby girl's, room done. We had the house done. I was on maternity leave. Everything was wrapped up at work. So that was a blessing because, we were really, really prepared. And so the doctor had told me worst case scenario with this condition of I would have to have a C-section, but also I'd have to go under, so be under general anesthetic, which means, you can't even like receive your baby. And that would obviously be worst case scenario. But then he also said a big factor with placenta previa is pre-bleeding. And if you bleed, it could mean that you're in spontaneous labor or, something's happening with the placenta and they have to do emergency C-section. So that's why I was going on bed rest because there's a time window with this condition too. And he basically said, if you're bleeding for, let's say, over an hour, it's very detrimental to the baby. The way he described it, because my doctor's awesome. I see Dr. Moffrey at Pindara Private and he's got gray hair and he was like, your condition is the reason I have gray hair. And I remember laughing and just thinking, oh yeah, he's got to tell me all the risks. He has to tell me everything, but it won't happen to us. I'll go on bed rest. I'll have the C-section. And, I had already started putting a playlist together for the C-section. I had listened to some podcasts about really positive C-sections. I had done the Rise meditation. We have a beautiful C-section birth meditation on the Rise app. I was doing that. And so I felt really good. I felt really calm. I felt really excited. And so I was slowing down for work and it was Friday, the 11th of July. And I had my last beauty appointments booked in. So because I knew I was going on bed rest, I booked in my hair, nails, lashes, especially being postpartum. I just remember with Ivy, I didn't do anything like that. And then I, wanted to get some of those appointments done postpartum. And it's like very hard because you have a newborn and you can't basically. So I was very onto my appointments. That was kind of like the blessing of having a specific date going into hospital. So this day I had my last appointments and then I just wanted a week with Tim and Ivy and we were going to do a whole bunch of fun things. And so I got my nails done, I got my lashes done, and then I got home, me and Ivy did some baking, Tim went to golf and me and Ivy played on the playground and, watched TV. And it's funny because she was playing on the playground and the sun was setting. And I just remember looking at the sunset, this is in the afternoon. And I was just feeling so grateful, like full euphoria vibes. Like I remember thinking, Oh my God, I am obsessed with this home. I cannot believe we're in our dream home. I cannot believe, we found this house, we moved in it, how good it feels, how grounded I feel. I cannot believe how obsessed I am with Tim and Ivy. I love being pregnant. I'm so ready for a newborn. Like I'm talking like 10 out of 10 grateful on the scale of high vibration. I was, 100. And in saying that, that's not unusual for me. So I was just like going with it. And I was like, what a vibe. This is beautiful. And then Tim got home from golf. We got takeout. We watched a movie, still feeling really, really good. And then we went to bed. When we went to bed, I remember crying to Tim, and I was just quite upset about having to go on bed rest, leaving Ivy, because since becoming pregnant, I know scientifically you release a specific hormone that does make, like the love, you're releasing more oxytocin and like all those sorts of things. And so you will find your toddlers, if you have one, are more clingy towards you. And so since being pregnant and slowing down, my relationship with Ivy had really changed and evolved. And it was so sweet and beautiful. And I was just loving it so much. So I was having this like physical reaction to going on to bed rest and away from her because, I put her to bed every night. We cuddle, we read books, and, I feel like I don't have to explain that. But I was crying to Tim and I was like, I don't want to go on bed rest. I don't want to go away from you guys. And he's like, it's fine. We'll come up and see you every day. Like, it's okay. You just have to do what's best for, this baby. We already knew what we were going to call her. So, he's like, you just got to do what's best for Lacey. And I was like, I know. But I was very emotional. Tim then went to sleep, and I also took half a sleeping tablet, a Restative, which is okay to take when you're pregnant. Do want to say that. But just half. And this was something that I had done because I was having really bad insomnia towards the end, to the point where I would go to sleep. I'd wake up at like 11, 12 or 1 a.m. and I would not get back to sleep. And then it was just wrecking me the whole next day. And so I took a half a sleeping tablet. Sometimes I take a quarter, sometimes a half. And that just helps me relax. And I was finding too, I was, peeing multiple times a night because I was heavily pregnant, and taking that, I could get up to pee, go straight back to sleep. And so that's just something I was doing that my doctor had helped me with. And so I took, half a tablet of my sleeping tablet. I was going to go to sleep, but then I was like, it's Friday night and I'm going to scroll on TikTok. And it's funny because I don't really allow myself to scroll during the week because I know sometimes then my sleep is really bad. So I was like, no, I'm going to treat myself. It's Friday night. Scrolling on TikTok, and the algorithm was more, like funny videos. So I remember laughing, and I remember being like, oh shit, I think I've weed myself, which is not uncommon when you're pregnant. And so I was like, oh, I think I've weed myself. And then I didn't even get up then. Like I kind of just like stayed scrolling for a little bit longer because I was watching something funny. And then I was like, oh no, I think I've really weed myself. And so I got up, and when I got up, I could feel, like it was like very wet down there. And I was like, oh my God, surely I haven't like actually weed, like fully weed, like not just, a little bit. And I put my hand down there and put it up, and, it was completely dark because Tim was asleep, and I could see that there was something on my hand. So I quickly went and turned the light on, looked into the mirror, and my pajama pants were just soaking in blood. And so I quickly went to the toilet and pulled down my pants, and there was blood clots. And for a moment, I just it's like I just was like stuck in time. And it took a moment to be like, holy shit, this is happening. Something's not right. Obviously, something's not right. And I knew I was only 34 weeks. And it's funny because I actually had a doctor's appointment the day before, and he was like, she's 34 weeks, only a couple more weeks, and, she's fully cooked. At the moment, her lungs are still underdeveloped. That happens next week. And so I kind of just remember him being like, she's basically, she's not fully cooked. And I remember being like, oh my God, no, she can't come out. She's
she's too small, she's too young. And anyway, so I had that thought in that micro moment. I quickly woke up Tim and turned on the light and just stood there. And he obviously saw my pajama pants and his face just went fully white. And I remember the look on his face and he just goes, I'm getting Ivy, get the keys, like get in the car. We need to go to the hospital. Call Dr. Moffrey. And so he went and got Ivy from bed. She was obviously sleeping. And I called my doctor and I said, I'm bleeding. And he's like, how much? Because previously he said, literally, if you have a couple of drops, come into emergency. Like that's how serious the bleeding is with this condition. And so he's like, how much are you bleeding? I'm like, no, I'm bleeding a lot. It's not good. And I'm like, my pajama pants are soaked. Like, I need to get a towel. And he was like, getting like shivers saying this, but he was like, Georgia, it is so important that you get in the car and you get here as soon as possible. Stay calm. I'm going to meet you there. But like, don't grab anything, like get in the car right now and leave. And I could just feel the seriousness, the emergency in his voice. And I just was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Like, this can't be happening. And so Tim got Ivy, we got in the car, and me and Tim were kind of just silent the whole time. We just explained to Ivy, Mummy is bleeding. We need to go to the hospital. Baby sister might be coming out. We're very transparent with her. And I called Tim's mum because they were on the coast, and I just said, I'm bleeding really heavily. We're going to the hospital. I need you to come and get Ivy. And she was like, yep, of course. We'll see you guys soon. And then I called back, and then Dr. Moffrey called me and he's like, how close are you? I'm like 5 minutes away. He's like, all right, I'm here. I'm waiting. Come around the side. Come straight to emergency. Like, don't park. We need to get you straight in. And then he said, I think we're having baby girl tonight. And I just like, I had such a mixed emotions because I was like, okay, good. She needs to come out because obviously what's happening inside is, not good. I'm bleeding. But then also I just was like, oh my God, she's so small. She's so tiny. She's undeveloped. Her lungs aren't developed. And so I just remember on the car ride there just holding my stomach, and I could feel her moving, so that like I didn't feel completely scared for her life because I could kind of feel her moving inside. So I didn't feel like she had stopped moving. But I just remember holding my stomach and being like, you have to be okay. Like, just stay strong. You have to be okay. And I was just kind of talking to her that I said to her, you might be coming out tonight, but you have to be okay. Daddy's going to be with you. So yeah, then we got to hospital. My doctor was literally there. He like opened the car door. He got me out. Tim got Ivy out, and we went straight in. We went into a birth suite and there was like a whole bunch of nurses rushed in. He did an examination. He wanted to put, I don't really know what it's called, but he wanted to put basically like something inside that stops you bleeding. And he put it in and it fell straight out. And he was like, oh my God. Well, he didn't say, oh my God, but he was like, Georgia, you're already in spontaneous labor. We have to get her out right now because, again, like I said at the start, if you go into spontaneous labor, instantly baby girl is on a time limit where it's, very detrimental for her. So he said that, and I was like, oh my God. And he yelled out to the nurses, and he's like, we need to get her, to the OR or whatever it's called straight away. She needs to come out right now. Then all the nurses rushed in. They were, asking me questions. They were putting things on me. They put me on the stretcher. They took my clothes off. And then we were like leaving towards the OR, and I hadn't seen Tim and Ivy, and I was like, wait, like I have to say goodbye to Tim and Ivy. And they were in the waiting room or something. So then they came, and I just said to Tim, like, don't stay with me. Make sure you like go with Lacey when she's born, like wherever she is. don't worry about me. And then, gave Ivy a big kiss and cuddle and just said, mummy's going to go have baby sister and we'll see you soon. And she was really sleepy and stuff, so she didn't really understand the situation. So then they wheeled me to the OR, like through the hospital to the OR. Again, I just remember there was like 10 or so people in the room, a lot of people asking questions. I remember also thinking, because I had just had dinner at 7 p.m. and it was 9 p.m. And I remember thinking, like, how can I go under, like I've just had food and they made me drink this like certain solution that helps like dissolve things in your stomach. And then my doctor said, now I know that, you wanted to receive her, but you've lost too much blood and it's too dangerous for both of you. You will have to, be completely under. And at that moment, I just kind of was in that surrendered state of just like, you do whatever you need to do to get her safe. I think I even said that to him and I was like, yeah, it's fine. Just, get her out kind of thing. So it was very full on. And then I was even awake when they put the catheter in, like they didn't really have enough time to do it all in the proper way. And so put the catheter in. I had quite a few cannulas in my arms. And also we had some machines in there if I lost too much blood. And then the last thing I remember is obviously just, having that thing on your mouth and getting put under. And when he told me she was going to come out tonight, like back when we were in the birth suite, I remember my whole body just started shaking. It's like, I think before, because I had the sleeping tablet, I was quite relaxed considering the situation and the amount of blood. And I was just like talking to her. I felt quite relaxed. I was breathing. And then when he was like, she's not okay, you're in spontaneous labor, we need her, get her out right now. And I'm getting shivers saying it to you guys, but like I just started shaking. And that's when I started really freaking out and being like, oh my God, like what about if I wake up and she's not okay? Or, you always go to the worst case scenario. So that was really, really scary, really full on. But then they put me under. That's the last thing I remember. And I woke up in the recovery room and straight away the nurse goes, she's fine, she's healthy. Her lungs are underdeveloped, so she did need to go in on oxygen, and they call it in like an isonet capsule thing where the baby needs to go in and have oxygen. So she's like, she's fine, your husband's with her. And I just was like, oh, like obviously instant release, felt so much better. And then I stayed in recovery just probably only like 10 minutes. And then they wheeled me up to see her in the special care nursery. And she was so small. Oh my gosh, she was tiny. So she was born at 2.2 kilos. And then they lose a bit. So she ended up losing and weighing just 2 kilos. So if you think of how small 2 kilos is, she was so tiny. And so the first time I saw her, she was, hooked up to all the machines. She had like a oxygen mask on. She had a cannula in. And obviously it was very full on to see her like that. And then I had just had emergency surgery. And yeah, it was very full on. It was very emotional. So we saw her, we stayed with her for a bit. And at this point, it's like 11, 12 p.m. So the timeline was, I noticed I was bleeding at probably 20 to 9. And then we got to the hospital at 9. And then she was born at 9:22. So very, very quick, And it's funny because, a couple of people have asked, like, how does Tim, feel about this experience? And obviously he was very, scared and it was very full on. But the way he describes it is it was such a short amount of time from 8:40 to her being born at 9:20. He kind of was in shock, but you don't have a lot of time to sit in the worrying and that sort of thing. So that's kind of a blessing because it was all just so fast. So from the time that I started bleeding, I was like, holy shit, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know, how she is, till only, an hour later knowing she's okay. That side of things that was a blessing rather than, not knowing for longer, but very full on, very traumatic. And then after that, we got wheeled back to the room. So she stayed in special care nursery. They had a feeding tube for her. And we got back to the room and I couldn't really sleep that night. I really struggled. I don't know if it was like the drugs from surgery, but I was like off and on. And they also come and check you every 2 hours. So they check your incision, they check your blood pressure and everything like that. And then Tim slept, and then the next day woke up. In order to go and see her, I had to have a shower and get out of bed. So I did that. And can we just talk about the C-section recovery? Because I'm just going to be really honest with you guys. It was pretty fucked up. I don't know. I think I have a couple of girlfriends who had a C-section, and they were like, it's not that bad. The recovery is really fine. No, it was so full on. Like the pain was quite excruciating. And look, I'm sorry if you're booked in for a C-section, and I'm not trying to scare anyone or I'm just telling you my experience, but the recovery was so full on. I've had a vaginal birth with Ivy and then having a C-section. And honestly, I would opt for the vaginal birth any day of the week. And that I was in labor for, 20 hours. But it's just, it was so painful and I couldn't stand up straight. And I just I don't know if it made a difference because it was an emergency, but yeah, the recovery was not well. And I had to take quite a few pain meds to just feel okay. And then, when you're on pain meds, you never feel like yourself. So the next couple of days after that were really full on because we couldn't actually hold Lacey for 3 days. And that's because her oxygen levels kept dipping. And so she had to stay in this it's called an isolette where she's got oxygen through her an oxygen mask, but then also oxygen in this tank sort of thing where she was in. And then the peds doctor just explained that, if you take her out to hold her, it could dip and it can just really affect then her recovery. So obviously, again, we're going to listen to the doctors. But that was very full on and very emotional time. You can imagine going through emergency C-section at just 34 weeks and then not receiving your baby when they first come out and then not being able to hold her for 3 days. Yeah, it was very, very difficult, very emotional. I was crying pretty much the whole time. And Tim was amazing though. He really held me emotionally and physically through that time. And really, yeah, I think I felt this too with Ivy's birth, but I feel like since Lacey was born, our relationship, it again has gotten stronger because of what you go through, together, and how he showed up for, me and Lacey during that time was really, really special. So yeah, the next couple of days were just kind of a blur. Lacey was getting fed through a tube. And then kind of the next sort of season the next kind of thing is Lacey had to stay in the special care nursery. I was, recovering after a C-section, you stay in hospital for 5 days. And so what that kind of looked like was once I could hold her, I was going up to hold her, as much as possible, but it was usually only twice a day just because, again, we didn't want her oxygen to dip. And then I was pumping. So my milk came in after day 3, and before that I was just expressing colostrum, and I was actually getting a lot. And with Ivy I didn't get a lot, so I was like really loving that factor. So we were feeding her colostrum. She was also getting fed through the tube. And because she was a preemie, they actually have a program in the hospital where they have donated breast milk. So through the tube, she was getting breast milk, from someone else the first 3 days. And then my milk came in at day 3. And then I was pumping every 3 hours. And I was very grateful that my supply was really good. And my supply was good. So she then was feeding off my breast milk from then. And I honestly think my supply was really good this time because if you think of a newborn's mouth, they can only suck so much and then they get tired and they stop. Whereas I was pumping every 3 hours for 20 minutes. And so I think just like the constant pumping just really brought my milk in sooner. But obviously you're not supposed to pump. You're supposed to let the newborn do it, but Lacey wasn't breastfeeding. So then the week that I was in hospital, just going back and forth, seeing her pumping. And honestly, that was probably the hardest time because, I was in hospital recovering from birth without a baby in my room and going back and forth, very sore from the C-section, very emotional, all the hormones is wild. And I've honestly never cried so much in my life. And it was like really, really traumatic, if I'm being honest. And the hospital was great though. The nurses were great. The hospital was great. The actual director of the maternity unit ended up coming to see me, and I just remember breaking down, hysterically crying to her after day 5, being like, I can't leave the hospital. Like I can't leave without her. It just like in my body, it just like I just couldn't. Like I felt so physically unwell that I was supposed to leave the hospital without my baby. And they were really good. They let me stay another couple of nights because I think they could see my mental health was not well. And so I stayed another couple of nights. And during those times too, I could start breastfeeding Lacey. So I started doing a couple of, they call them nuzzles. So nuzzling her, just putting on her the boob. And then she was getting fed by the tube after. And then it was time to leave the hospital, which was honestly one of the hardest days because it was hard because obviously I had to leave her in the hospital, but like I knew she was getting taken care of by the special care nurses. But then also I wanted to go home and see Ivy. And I felt really bad for Ivy because, she did come up and see us at the hospital. But like I said, I just, you know, really wanted to see her. I really wanted to spend time with her. But then I wanted to be at the hospital with Lacey. So it was just really hard because I felt like my heart was like breaking in two. So I wanted to be at the hospital, but then I wanted to be home with Ivy. And so I really didn't know how I was going to feel. But then I left the hospital and it actually was better because during the hospital, being in this room, just the hospital environment can be like a bit depressing, let's say. And so I got home, I got into my own bed, I unpacked. My parents were there. They stayed with us for a couple of weeks. So my parents were there. It was really good to see them. And then I would go and visit Lacey in the hospital twice a day. So even though I didn't want to leave the hospital, once I did, I was kind of glad because I got some normalcy at home, and just like being in your own house, your own clothes, your own bed is like so much nicer. But then I would go up and visit Lacey. So I'm glad when I got home, but then like before I didn't want to leave the hospital. It was really, really hard. So then I got home, and then it was probably about 2 weeks of going up and down to the hospital. So basically how it would look was, because the criteria for Lacey to come out of special care nursery was she needed to be putting on weight and she needed to be having all suck feeds. So, she feeds every 3 hours, and at the start she's getting fed through the tube. And because preemies are so tiny, if they're sucking on a bottle or breast, it exhausts them and they can start to lose weight and not put on weight. So the hospital kind of make you do it in a very slow way where it starts with 1 breastfeed a day. And then you go to 2 breastfeeds a day, but it has to be 6 hours in between. And then you go to 3, but it has to be every second breastfeed. And it's all this criteria. So I feel like once I left the hospital, I was kind of in survival mode of just getting Lacey home. And so whatever the doctor said I could do, if it was, okay, you can go to 2 breastfeeds, I was just doing whatever I could do and obviously trying to be there as much as possible. And so what it would look like is I'd wake up at 5:30 after pumping every 3 hours overnight, wake up at 5:30, we'd get to hospital at 6 a.m., do the first feed, we'd stay, maybe get a coffee or something, and then do the next feed, go home for lunchtime, and then come back and stay till, 6 or 7 p.m. And we kind of did that for 2 weeks straight. And the hospital, when I asked the nurses at the start, when she was, 34 weeks in hospital, I said, what's the kind of time limit of her coming home? And everyone said, look, probably not till she's 39 weeks, term. That's generally when they come home. And so I was like, that's a month in hospital, a month going back and forth. And I even remember when they said it, I thought in my head, I was like, no, she's going to come home sooner. So I was very determined on getting her home and doing whatever was necessary. And we were very lucky because she was such a good feeder and she got on the breast straight away. She'd wake up for all her feeds. She was doing really, really well. So she ended up coming home when she was just 36 and a half weeks, which all the nurses and the hospital were really surprised that she could get to that point. And I was just so happy and so relieved. And I feel from that 34 weeks, from the emergency C-section to the 36, 37, I was just in survival mode and I couldn't talk to anyone on the phone. I couldn't be in the outside world. It was very I was in this bubble and I just was doing what was necessary to get Lacey home and, be with Ivy and recover. And then once Lacey came home, it just was instant relief. And that's when, I felt like I could start her my postpartum. Because it just also was very odd because, you're trying to recover from a C-section and you're going, getting up and down, you're driving. I personally wasn't driving, I was getting driven. But you're not really recovering and you're in survival mode. So it really wasn't until Lacey was home that I felt relief and was like, oh my God, I can actually just be. And she came home and it was just the best. I cannot even explain to you the feeling of when she came home and we were a family. It was just so special. And my parents, they stayed 1 more week just to make sure, we were sorted with Lacey. And then they left and it was just, me, Tim and Ivy and Lacey. And it was just so special. I just can't even explain that period then for a good month after. I just would hold her, look at her and just be so obsessed. And then since then, honestly, she is such a beautiful baby. She has such an amazing temperament. I don't know. I think everyone has said it's well deserved after the birth and everything we went through postpartum, but it was just so incredible to get her home. And then she just fed and she slept. And obviously she's a newborn, she cries, she cluster feeds and all the things. But I cannot tell you how just in love with her and the newborn bubble and postpartum I am, even though it was a very full on, birth experience and everything that happened. I just feel so grateful. I just feel so happy. I feel like I'm about to cry just thinking of how happy I am that she's here and she's okay and we're together. And I don't know, she's just perfect. She's an actual angel baby. And I know this is normal, but I just like sit and look at her all day. I just breastfeed her, look at her, and I'm just obsessed. And it's crazy because when I got pregnant, I really was intentional about scripting exactly what I'm telling you and being like, I remember writing in my journal. Actually, let me see if I can find, because I often put things in my notes as my journal. And let me actually read out a journal piece for you. Okay, so this is a journal piece I wrote from June 29th. Yeah, June 29th. So it's like, 12 days before I gave birth. I just wrote, I'm so grateful I get to rest from home before our C-section birth. I love spending so much time with Ivy Girl. I'm feeling so rested and calm. The first moments of seeing baby girl is like nothing I've ever experienced. It is pure magic. We are so well rested. Baby girl is so calm, loves snuggles, and is so easy. She latches straight away, easily finding feeding natural and normal. I feel so calm and at peace. My recovery is easier than I expected. I feel so healthy, so full of energy, and so ready for the newborn nights. The newborn nights are easy too. I notice her cues, I pick up on them, and she's so settled and feeds easily and sleeps so well. We are so grateful. I feel so amazing in my body and in my mind and in this new season. I've never been happier. So that's what I wrote in my notes. And I can like truly say that's how I feel despite everything happening with the birth. And again, you guys know everything only has a meaning if you put that meaning onto it. So even though, quote unquote, my birth, could be called traumatic and you could label it a whole host of things, I really just don't feel that way. Like it was full on and it really required a new level of growth and resilience and capacity from me. But it honestly was like the most incredible thing, because not only did it birth Lacey, who was obviously obsessed, so in love, but it birthed a new me. And I feel so different. I feel so much more me. I don't know if I'm articulating things right, but I just feel so much more me. And the way I can explain it is I'm like, it was perfect. It was all meant to go that way. We were meant to go through that, because how I feel right now is so connected to Lacey, so connected to myself, so at peace. I feel so safe in my body. I feel like I just have this deep knowing that everything that has happened up until now was bringing us to this point. And I just feel, I don't know, I just feel pure bliss. I feel pure happiness. I feel so content. It's just right. And I hope I'm articulating that well. But yeah, so that is the wild story. Again, this is just my experience. And like I said, despite like if someone, is probably hearing this, probably thinking, holy shit, that's wild. It was, but also, yeah, it was so perfect for us. And now, I am about 2 months postpartum. We're finding our groove. She's sleeping really well. We're just feeding on demand. We're getting a couple of long stretches at night. And it's funny, I was telling Jamie this morning, I, wore my Whoop when I was pregnant. And I just want to say to my pregnant mamas, like, newborn tired is not as bad as pregnancy tired. When I was pregnant and wearing my Whoop, I literally could not get out of the orange or red because it will give you like, green. If you're in the green, you're good to go. And then it goes down to orange and then red. And red obviously means like do nothing today because you're exhausted. And when I was pregnant with Lacey, I was always in the orange and red despite having like an 8-9 hour sleep. Obviously the insomnia wasn't helping, but like I'm waking up, probably twice a night at the moment with her being 8 weeks. On a rare occasion, just once, but mostly twice a night. And I'm still in the green. Like, and I think it's just because recovery is going really well with the C-section. I am really on to all my supplements. If you haven't listened to the postpartum glow up episode where I talk about what I'm doing postpartum, I actually recorded that when I was pregnant, but I had a plan in place. I'm doing everything in that plan in regards to the supplements I'm taking, the water I'm drinking, and everything like that. And yeah, newborn tired, not as bad. Like I wake up twice a night and the wake ups are about 45 minutes to an hour. That's how long it takes to feed her. And honestly, like fine. Obviously I have my days and I can get a bit agitated and whatnot, but honestly fine. And so if you're pregnant and you're like, oh my God, especially if you have a toddler and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Trust me when I say newborn tired is not as bad as pregnancy tired. So yes, despite everything, I am feeling so good, so happy, and just really loving this current season.